Today, we pause to remember for extraordinary Americans whose lives left indelible marks on our nation and culture, from the quiet halls of art galleries to the stormy seas of history, from the bright lights of the stage and screen to the corridors of political power. These figures each shape the world in ways both profound and enduring. In their passing, we are reminded of the fragility of life, the depth of human endeavor, and the power of a single individual to leave a legacy that reverberates far beyond their years. Join us as we honor their stories, their triumphs, and the memories that will live on long after their final days. The news arrived quietly, confirmed in the early hours of December 19, 2025. Robert Eliot Mnuchin had passed away at the age of 92, closing the chapter on a life that moved calmly between money and meaning, commerce and culture. For decades, Mnuchin was known as a steady figure in the world of finance. He began his career at Goldman Sachs in the early 1960s, a time when Wall Street still valued patience and long vision. Over 33 years, he rose through the ranks, earning respect not through noise or spectacle, but through careful judgment and discipline. Colleagues often described him as thoughtful and reserved, a man who listened more than he spoke. One former partner recalled, Robert never rushed a decision. He believed that time reveals truth, whether in markets or in people. Yet even during those years in banking, another world was quietly shaping him. Art was not a hobby for Mnuchin. It was a calling that grew stronger with time. While others collected artist status, he collected with study and care. He visited galleries, spoke with artists, and learned the history behind each brushstroke. Friends say that after long days in finance, art was where his spirit rested. Art gave him balance, a family member once shared. It reminded him that value is not always measured in numbers. When Mnuchin retired from Goldman Sachs, many expected him to step back into a quieter life. Instead, he stepped forward into the art world with purpose. In 1993, he founded the Mnuchin Gallery in New York City, placing it in the heart of Chelsea, where new voices and historic masters could speak to each other. The gallery was not built to impress, it was built to connect. Mnuchin believed galleries should be places of learning, not intimidation. Visitors remember the calm energy of the space and the way art was allowed to breathe. Through the Mnuchin Gallery, he became a champion of artists whose work shaped modern thought. He showed deep commitment to figures like Willem de Kooning, not just as investments, but as cultural landmarks. He worked closely with estates and scholars, helping to present works in their proper context. An art historian once said, Robert didn't just sell art, he protected its story. Mnuchin's approach earned him trust across generations. Young collectors saw him as a guide. Established institutions saw him as a partner. Artists saw him as someone who truly looked. He was known for standing quietly in front of a painting, hands folded, eyes focused, as if listening. One gallery assistant recalled, he treated every artwork like a person with a voice. In 2019, Mnuchin made global headlines with the purchase of Jeff Koons' Rabbit for $80 million, the highest price ever paid for a living artist at that time. To many, it was a shocking number. To Mnuchin, it was a statement of belief. He understood that art reflects its era, and that contemporary voices deserve the same respect once reserved for the past. In a rare public comment, he said, art history is still being written, we are responsible for how it survives. Behind the scenes, Mnuchin was also a mentor. He advised young dealers, encouraged curators, and opened doors without asking for credit. Several museum directors later shared that his guidance helped shape major exhibitions. One curator wrote online, Robert Mnuchin believed in people before the world believed in them. That faith changed careers. Despite his influence, Mnuchin avoided the spotlight. He rarely gave interviews and preferred private conversations over public praise. Those close to him say humility defined his character. He believed art should shine brighter than the collector. At gallery openings, he often stood to the side, observing the room rather than commanding it. He wanted art to lead. A longtime colleague said, he followed. Family remained central to his life. Though private, Mnuchin spoke often about the importance of shared meals, long talks, and passing values from one generation to the next. He believed culture was something to be protected at home, as much as in museums. A family statement released after his passing read, Robert lived with curiosity, kindness, and deep respect for beauty in all its forms. As news of his death spread, tributes appeared from across the art and finance worlds. Museums lowered flags, galleries shared quiet posts of gratitude. One message read simply, thank you for building bridges where others built walls. Another wrote, you showed us that wealth can serve art and art can serve humanity. Mnuchin's legacy is not confined to auction records or gallery walls. It lives in the conversations he started, the artists he supported, and the institutions he strengthened. He believed art had the power to slow people down, to make them think, and to help them feel connected across time. In a fast world, he offered patience. In a loud world, he offered silence. Today, the galleries he shaped continue to welcome new eyes, the artworks he protected continue to speak, and the bridge he built between commerce and creativity remains strong. Robert Eliot Mnuchin is remembered not just as a collector, but as a guardian of culture, a quiet force whose influence will echo far beyond his lifetime. As the lights dim in the spaces he loved, his presence lingers steady, thoughtful, and enduring. His life reminds us that true legacy is not what we own, but what we preserve. And in that, Robert Mnuchin leaves behind a legacy that will not fade. The news was confirmed quietly on December 19, 2025, leaving fans and colleagues in a shared moment of disbelief. James Finley Ransone III had passed away at the age of 46, and with him went a voice that spoke softly, but carried deep truth. Ransone was never the loudest presence in a room, yet his work stayed long after the screen went dark. He was an actor who did not perform a life from a distance, he stepped inside it. From the beginning, his roles felt lived in, shaped by observation, empathy, and an understanding of human fragility. He first reached a wide audience as Ziggy Sobotka in The Wire. Ziggy was reckless, insecure, and desperate to be seen. Ransone gave him more than flaws. He gave him a soul. Viewers did not always like Ziggy, but they understood him. Years later, many still spoke of that performance as one of the show's most painful and honest portraits. That role set the tone for Ransone's career. He did not chase heroes or easy sympathy. He chose characters who were broken, searching, and real. In Generation Kill, he showed the quiet weight carried by soldiers far from home. His performance was restrained, never forced, allowing silence to speak where words could not. Ransone's work in film followed the same path. In Sinister, Tangerine, It Chapter 2, and The Black Phone, he brought depth to roles that could have been simple. Even in horror, he focused on fear as a human experience, not a spectacle. His characters felt like people you might know, or parts of yourself you rarely name. A fellow actor once said, James didn't act scared or hurt. He understood it. That understanding was visible in his eyes, his pauses, and the way he held a scene without demanding attention. Directors trusted him because he never tried to steal a moment. He served the story. Despite growing recognition, Ransone avoided the spotlight. He rarely appeared on red carpets and gave few interviews. Fame was not his goal, craft was. He studied scripts closely and often arrived on set with handwritten notes, small details about who his character was when no one was watching. Those who worked with him describe a man deeply committed, but kind. Crew members remember him greeting everyone by name. Younger actors recall quiet encouragement between takes. One wrote online, James made you feel safe to be honest in a scene. That was his gift. Ransone's dedication often came from personal reflection. He understood pain, uncertainty, and the struggle to belong. Rather than hide from those feelings, he used them to build truth on screen. A close friend shared, he believed that if you didn't feel something, the audience never would. Fans connected to that honesty. Many took to social media after his passing, sharing scenes that stayed with them for years. One message read, he played the parts of us that don't get seen. Another said, James Ransone made me feel understood without saying much at all. As his career grew, Ransone continued choosing projects that challenged him. He valued stories that explored morality, fear, and resilience, even when roles were small. His presence was strong. He believed there were no minor characters, only untold lives off-screen. Ransone lived quietly. He valued privacy, music, and long conversations. Those close to him say he was thoughtful and reflective, often questioning himself and the world around him. He believed art should ask questions, not give easy answers. When news of his death spread, tributes came from across the industry. Directors praised his discipline. Actors praised his generosity. Fans praised his truth. One filmmaker wrote, James reminded us that acting is not about being seen. It's about seeing others. His legacy is not measured by awards or headlines. It lives in moments. A look held a second too long. A line delivered under his breath. A character remembered years later because it felt real. Ransone left behind a body of work that continues to breathe. Long after his final performance, he showed that vulnerability is not weakness, but strength. That pain can be shaped into meaning. That stories matter when they are told honestly. Through his work, he gave audiences permission to feel without judgment. As the final credits roll on his life, James Finley Ransone III is remembered as an actor who lived inside his characters, and in doing so, helped others understand themselves. His work remains steady and sincere, like a quiet voice in the dark reminding us that we are not alone. And in that enduring truth, his memory continues to shine gentle, human, and unforgettable. The confirmation came softly on December 18, 2025, as North Carolina awoke to the loss of a familiar and steady voice. James Baxter Hunt Jr. had passed away at the age of 88, leaving behind a lifetime of service that shaped the state he loved for many. Hunt was not just a governor, he was a presence that spanned generations. As the longest-serving governor in North Carolina history, he guided the state through change with patience and care. His leadership was never hurried. It was built on the belief that progress takes time, trust, and steady hands. Hunt first took office in 1977. At a moment when the South was redefining itself, the challenges were complex, and the future uncertain. Yet Hunt approached leadership with calm resolve. He believed government could be a force for good when guided by purpose and respect for people. Education stood at the center of his vision. Hunt often said that a child's future should never be limited by where they were born. During his 4 terms, he worked to strengthen public schools, expand access to early education, and support teachers across the state. One former educator recalled, "Governor Hunt didn't see schools as buildings. He saw them as doors." His commitment to learning shaped policy decisions for decades. He believed that education was not just preparation for work, but preparation for life. Under his leadership, North Carolina invested in universities, community colleges, and research institutions that would later fuel economic growth. Hunt understood that knowledge builds opportunity and opportunity builds dignity. Economic progress followed that belief. As industries changed and new technologies emerged, Hunt focused on attracting innovation while protecting local communities. He worked to balance growth with fairness, ensuring that rural and urban areas could move forward together. A business leader once said, "He planned for the long road, not the next election." Hunt's leadership style was marked by listening. He valued conversation over confrontation. Even during political disagreement, he treated opponents with respect. Colleagues often noted his ability to lower tension simply by staying calm. One lawmaker reflected, "Jim Hunt believed you could disagree without losing your humanity." Through times of national challenge, Hunt remained steady. He led during moments of economic uncertainty and social change, always guided by the belief that people deserve honest leadership. He avoided harsh rhetoric and focused on unity. His speeches were thoughtful, measured, and grounded in hope rather than fear. Beyond policy, Hunt was deeply connected to the people of North Carolina. He traveled often, visiting small towns and listening to everyday concerns. He believed leadership meant being present. A longtime resident once shared, "He didn't talk down to people. He talked with them." After leaving office, Hunt did not step away from public life. Instead, he continued to serve through mentorship, advocacy, and education initiatives. He supported young leaders and encouraged civic engagement. To many, he became a guide rather than a governor, offering wisdom shaped by experience. Family was a quiet strength throughout his life. Hunt often spoke of the importance of values passed down through generations. His influence continues through his daughter, Lieutenant Governor Rachel Hunt, who carries forward his dedication to public service. A family statement shared after his passing read, "He believed deeply in people and their ability to build a better future together." Tributes poured in from across the state and beyond. Historians praised his long view of leadership. Citizens remembered his kindness and steadiness. One message shared online read, "Jim Hunt led with heart and patience. He made us believe tomorrow could be better." Former colleagues reflected on his integrity. They spoke of a man who prepared carefully, spoke thoughtfully, and acted with purpose. He never forgot who he worked for, one former staff member said. It was always the people. Hunt's legacy is woven into the fabric of North Carolina. It lives in classrooms where students are encouraged to dream. It lives in communities strengthened by thoughtful growth. It lives in a political culture shaped by respect and long-term thinking. He believed leadership was not about control, but about service, not about noise, but about trust. In a time when politics often felt divided, Hunt offered a reminder that calm and kindness still matter. As North Carolina reflects on his life, the sense of loss is matched by gratitude. Gratitude for a leader who chose patience over pride, for a public servant who believed deeply in tomorrow, for a man who showed that progress is built step by step, guided by care for others. James Baxter Hunt Jr. will be remembered as a statesman, a teacher at heart, and a believer in possibility. His life's work continues in the people he inspired and the state he helped shape, and as the years move forward, his legacy remains steady, like a guiding light reminding North Carolina that the future is something worth believing in and something worth building together. The news was confirmed on December 20, 2025, as the day settled into quiet reflection. Ira Eichschab, one of the last living witnesses to the attack on Pearl Harbor, passed away at the age of 105, closing a living chapter of history. For more than a century, Ike Shab carried memories that most people know only from books. He did not carry them loudly. He carried them with care. To those who met him, he was calm, gentle, and thoughtful. A man who understood the weight of what he had seen and the duty of remembering it. Born in the early 20th century, Shab grew up in a world very different from today's. Like many young men of his time, he answered the call to serve and joined the United States Navy. He was still young when history found him, not in a classroom, but on a quiet Sunday morning in Hawaii on December 7, 1941. Ike Shab was at Pearl Harbor when the attack began. The sky filled with sound and smoke, confusion turned to fear, and fear turned to action. In later years, he would recall the moment with simple words. It felt like the world changed in seconds, he once said. Nothing was the same after that. Shab rarely spoke about heroism when asked about bravery. He always pointed to others. He talked about shipmates who did not come home, about young men who faced danger without knowing what the next minute would bring. I just did my duty, he often said. The real heroes are the ones who didn't get to grow old. That day at Pearl Harbor shaped the rest of his life. It was not something he left behind when the war ended. Instead, it became a responsibility he carried forward. As the years passed and the number of living witnesses grew smaller, Shab understood that memory itself was fragile. For decades, he shared his story with patience and honesty. He spoke at schools, memorials, and interviews, never seeking attention, only understanding. He believed that remembering was a way to honor those who were lost. If we forget, he once told a group of students, then they're gone twice. Those who listened to him often remarked on his clarity. Even in his later years, his recollections were vivid, not dramatic, but human. He spoke of sounds, faces, and small details that made history real. A historian once said, "When Ike spoke, the past stopped being distant, it stood right in front of you." Shab did not see himself as a symbol. He saw himself as a witness. He believed history should be told by those who lived it, not polished or softened, but shared honestly. He spoke about fear as much as courage, about loss as much as duty. In doing so, he helped others understand the true cost of war outside of remembrance. Ike Shab lived a full and quiet life. He built a family, worked hard, and stayed connected to his community. Friends describe him as kind and steady, someone who listened carefully and spoke thoughtfully. He valued simple routines and long conversations. Family members often said that he rarely brought up the war at home unless asked. He did not want his life to be defined only by one day. Yet he never avoided the past, a relative once shared. He believed you could live forward while still honoring what came before. As the decades passed, Shab became a bridge between generations. Children who met him realized that history was not just dates and names, but people who once stood where they stood. One teacher recalled a classroom visit saying, "The room was silent. They knew they were listening to someone who had seen what they were studying." In public ceremonies, Shab stood with quiet dignity. He did not seek applause. He bowed his head in remembrance. When asked why he continued to attend events, well into his later years, he answered simply, "Someone has to remember out loud." Social media tributes after his passing reflected that respect. One message read, "Thank you for carrying the memory so we didn't have to forget." Another said, "Ike Shab was history with a heartbeat." Even as one of the last witnesses, Shab never claimed importance over others. He often reminded listeners that thousands shared similar stories, many never told. He saw his role as standing in for those voices. "I speak for them," he once said quietly. "They deserve to be heard." His long life allowed him to see the world change in ways he could not have imagined in 1941. Technology advanced, generations turned over, yet his message remained the same: peace is fragile, freedom is costly, memory matters. In his final years, Shab spoke less frequently, but his presence remained powerful. When he did speak, people leaned in. "The new time was precious," a fellow veteran once said. Listening to Ike felt like holding history in your hands. When news of his death spread, tributes came from veterans groups, educators, and ordinary citizens. Many expressed gratitude not just for his service, but for his willingness to remember. One post read, "He didn't let time erase the truth." Ike Shab's legacy is not found in medals alone. It lives in the lessons he shared, the silence he honored, and the respect he showed for those who served beside him. He taught that remembrance is an act of care. He showed that history is not only written in books, but carried in lives, that witnessing is a form of service, that telling the truth, even decades later, is a gift to the future. As a nation reflects on his passing, there was a sense of gratitude mixed with loss. Gratitude for a man who stood as a living link to a defining moment. Loss for the voice that reminded us what was at stake. Now, as one more light from that generation fades, his words remain. His memory remains. His witness remains. Ira Eichschab is remembered as a guardian of history, a quiet servant, and a reminder that the past lives on when we choose to remember it. And as long as his story is told, the echoes of that December morning will not be forgotten, and neither will the man who carried its truth with humility, dignity, and grace.